Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Tree Actions, the Human Forestry Podcast. And I'm flying solo this episode. My counterpart, Tony, is unable to be here today. And so it's just me and my special guest, all the way from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Mr. Clarence Talbot. How you doing today, Clarence?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Well, I've been trying to get you on the show for a while, and I'm very excited to have you. You got so many great stories, and you've been a fixture in Halifax in the tree world for many, many years, and I'm really looking forward to our episode. Um, and we kick off every podcast with the same question that we ask all our guests. And if you would please share with our audience the first time you remember feeling a connection to a tree or trees.
Well, I lived in a wooded area nearby a park, and we spent a lot of time. I mean, back in the day, we used to play cowboys and Indians. That was a big thing, right? And we were always the cowboys, of course, right? But anyway, it was just like I don't know. It's crazy. I love trees. I mean, we used to climb them. We had tree forts. We everything sort of was about trees. It was crazy. I guess I never knew that later on I'd be making my raising my kids to love trees and to take care of them at that time. But yeah, I always had a connection with trees ever since I could probably walk in the forest.
And was this forest in Halifax or in Nova Scotia? Sorry, is that where you grew up?
Yeah, yeah, I was in Halifax. We lived by the Fleming Tower. It's an old park, and it's just outside Halifax, or not outside. Actually, at that time, it was outside Halifax. The boundary was at the Rotary. It was crazy, and yeah, we lived nearly right in the center of it. Just across the little dirt road. So it was. We picked the blueberries there. We built our little camps in the woods. We climbed the trees. I mean, I remember there was an old hemlock tree, and we used to play kickball, and which was quite popular. And I don't know if that was one of the goal posts or not, but it was. Yeah, it was ancient, man, and we were just like wondering what the history of this place was. It was an old rope that was sort of like no tire on it, but a rope around hanging. And I don't know, it's kind of crazy how it all starts. Sometimes you look back
Yeah.
and you think, you know,
Well, yeah.
how did I get, involved in this?
So how did it transition from growing up in the woods and as a young person, and when did it you've realized there was a future to be had in the tree world?
Well, I don't know. I think it was a lot of little different things came together. Our family didn't hunt, and for some reason, I had this in me that I'd like to, like I wanted to go hunting, so I befriended a schoolmate, and his father was an ex-RCMP officer, and anyway, they introduced me to hunting, and in turn back in the forest, right? And then from there,
Yeah.
I started working like with the pulp and paper companies doing spacing, cleaning, silviculture treatments, and and then what happened
Okay.
was I went into the forestry school, Maritime Forest Ranger School, and I graduated from there. And I wanted to be a ranger, man. It was the thing to be. It was the toughest course there was in the Maritimes, right? And I made it through. And I thought, well, I want to work in the forest. And then I said, I don't know. I looked around. I mean, there was a pile of tree services, and I said, you know what? I think that's pretty cool. Running a bucket truck, working with trees in an urban setting here. I said, I think I'm going to try that out. And then I bought a bucket truck 4 months
Okay.
after. and I got into the tree service. And I don't know. Sometimes the wind blows you in one direction or another, you know. And you do a reflection, and you look back, and you say, how did I ever do this? How did I ever get into this? How did I, I don't know. It's a kind of a crazy, it's a crazy question, but it's our beginning, right? We all have a beginning in this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's an accidental, sometimes it's just a calling in you, and or it's someone else pushes you in that direction. And I'm not too sure. I think honestly, I think it was a combination of all of them all. Yeah.
Right. Right. And did you feel that your training as a ranger from ranger school, if you will, did that serve you well in the tree service world?
Well, yes, and like you say, ranger. I said ranger because they don't make any more rangers. You know what I mean? You know, and but
No. No.
it was a forest technician. That's the correct term they use now, but I said, screw it. I put Ranger on my cards, my business cards. Uh, I think half of it is because nobody can become a Ranger again, And but the situation here
Right.
is what I always said is that forestry school taught me probably I would say in around 60% of what I needed to move along to become a qualified or and later a certified arborist. And it introduced me to the native species that we had, the insects and diseases,
Mm.
entomology and genology. You can blurb this one. uh, Entomology and pathology. So it
Yeah.
introduced us to uh, you know, what types of soils you'd be looking at. Like, and a lot of people in arboriculture, they're focused sort of in the same direction, but they're looking in a different way. And what happens here is that when I look at pine trees, I don't just look at a magnificent pine tree, right? I look at there's sandy soil under
Hmm.
that pine tree. I know what type of soil's there. So when I look at different species of trees, I'm
Right.
looking at how they interact with other trees, what soil there is. Different. You can look at sugar maple and beech and stuff, and you say, "Oh, that's a rocky thing." They're all buddies. They're companion species, and so your forestry looks at things in a different way than arboriculture, but we're generally looking at the same thing. We love trees, and in forestry, it's more
Mm.
about harvest and volume, and it's about the usage of basically harvesting the trees. And I mean, today as an arborist for I don't know, I've been like 37 years running a tree service. Um, I don't know, 25 years, 30 years. I've been a certified arborist. I I don't like the idea of cutting trees down. And so I think there's a division there
Mm.
between forestry, and forestry is the wise use of of trees and the forest products. And
Hmm.
arboriculture is, I believe, the is protecting the trees, and protecting people, of course. And so I think there's two mindsets here, and I don't know. I think really. I mean, long and short is that I didn't want to work in the woods with bugs and mosquitoes, and I love working in the city. I'm not going to say what you can see walking down the street from the universities, and it was better to work in arboriculture. I thought it was more pleasing, and it seemed like you could safeguard people when you come in, and you can I do a hazard assessment as soon as I come in a property, and and then address any concerns that the potential client would want. But the thing is at the end of it, you made the place safe. You tried to talk the people out of actually cutting the trees down, And I mean, and like I said, the forestry is
Hmm.
all about harvesting the trees, right? Yes, it's managing the trees along the way, but the final goal is cut the tree down, man. You know, well, the final goal
Right.
in arboriculture is I want to keep that tree no matter what. So you know, there's two different worlds, but one world. You know, so I don't know if I'm blabbling on, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, but
So
it's interesting, and it's ironic because we, at the same time, tree services, and we talked about this once before, but that we also end up doing most of the removals in the urban setting, obviously, right?
yeah.
Like, and even though, and some people even think of us as tree cutters. Like, I think you mentioned someone said that you were a tree cutter, and you're like, don't call me a tree cutter.
Well. Let's. Now let's start this right properly. I love my wife. Okay,
Okay.
let's make that really clear. Okay, she's a wonderful person. I don't know why.
Okay.
Anyway, and she said to me, like, I overheard something, and she was. Someone said, "Well, what does your husband do? I know you work in the hospital as a lab technician and stuff." And my wife said, "Well, he cuts trees down for a living." And I said to her, I said, "Look, if you're going to say that, like, please just tell them that you don't know what I do, okay? Because that's not what I do. I eventually I may have to do that, but that's not my profession. And you know what, Dwayne? I there's a tree service down the shore here, and he advertises tree removal. That's what he advertised for your uh, blah 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 tree service, tree removal. And that's what his thing is. It's not tree service, it's tree removal. Because I guess that's the
Right.
biggest bang for his buck is to cut big, huge trees down and make a bunch of money. And as you and I were, speaking a few days ago, in Europe, what they call us is they call us tree surgeons. And what does a surgeon do in
Right.
with humans? They do everything they can do to keep the human alive. And it's the same thing with us. I'll talk someone for an hour or two to try to keep this majestic tree. I do not want to cut your tree down unless it has to. And and you know what? I find that this is true in the industry. Um, that true arborists have like they have a bond to the tree, and they don't want to cut the tree down, and they're trying to find every other excuse. And I've had I've preached this over the years, and this lady, she said to me once, she said, "Gee, I told my husband that we should keep this tree." And husband goes, "What is the matter with that guy? He could have made a bag of money cutting this thing down." And I'll tell you a short story. I like I've been doing this 37 years. So the thing is I've worked with people, and then I've worked for their children. I've worked for the great grandchildren, and it was kind of funny. My son and I were doing this job, and it was by the public gardens, and it was a condo, and it was. So the manager was there, and they were watching us. We were running two bucket trucks, and it was quite a challenge pruning this old elm tree that was declining. We were doing a lot of tip pruning, deadwooding, and a lady came out, and she was talking to the manager, and she was saying, "Oh, geez, we used to live quite a little ways away from here, but we decided we got old, and we had to move. But before that, Clarence did all our tree work." And he said that one day we called him in and we said, "Oh, we're worrying about the big storms and this big tree and in the front yard." And I said to her, I said, "That's a majestic tree that adds so much property value. I mean, someday in the future, someone's going to love this tree, and it's a shame that you're thinking about cutting it down." And so they did they did some deep thinking, and they said, "We're not going to cut it down." And this is like, this is like 15 years after that, when I made that recommendation. And they said that my husband and I, we moved closer to the hospital because medical issues, and she said, quite frequently we take a drive or a walk through the neighborhood, and we look at that tree, and we go, oh, I'm so glad we didn't cut that down. And you know what? We reflect on that conversation that they had with me 15 years ago about how majestic that tree is, and how important it is to the site. And to me, it was an overwhelming feeling because I
Hmm.
breathed that understanding or that feeling to someone else, and they're willing to listen. And they used to, they'd walk by the house, somebody else was there with their kids living life, and they're looking at that tree going, man, what a good decision we did by not cutting the tree down. And I don't know, it's a feeling that it's hard to explain, but the thing is that's what we are, Dwayne. That we're the keepers of the tree, right? We're the protectors. The trees can't talk,
Hmm.
we talk for them, you know
Right.
So sometimes you got to take them down. Let's face it.
Yeah, it's
An
always
old popple tree, I have no problem starting up a big saw and cutting maybe one of those down every once in a while. But an oak, hemlock, stuff that's going to live for 5, 6, 800 years. I don't think we have the right you know. And I explained it to a customer once. I said, so look, if you could sort of like picture the annual rings, the growth rings, and how many there is, and and kind of count the rings that you sort of own this tree, and who gives you the right to cut this tree down when so many other people would enjoy it in the future, right? So like I kind
right.
of like agree with like up in Ontario and stuff and different cities and stuff. They had these bylaws to protect the trees. Sometimes we do. I think we wish we had one here, but I'm glad we don't. You know what I mean? There's some rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keeping the majestic trees. So anyway, rambling again. Sorry, buddy.
No, no, no. It's all good. It's an interesting way to look at it. Like if you look at look at the cross section of the growth increments of a tree, and put on there the time for the bands that you would have been, I guess, the owner of that tree. Let's say it's on a property, and how many different people owned that tree or were affected or shared space with that tree, and who are you to prevent anyone else from sharing that space, particularly on a tree like an oak or a beech that is going to live for so
Yeah.
long. It's definitely another perspective, and obviously as tree people we think of that and we relate to that, but that's, I think you're right. There is we do it is our for people that really are passionate about trees and tree work, we can't help but try to communicate that aspect to the
Yeah.
individuals. And I think a lot of times people are happy to hear it. They get educated by us and they go, oh, you know what? That's actually, I never thought of it like that. I think and then they want to save it or they want to
Yeah.
keep it. And that's, there's always that fine line. I think I would tell my students when I was at the college that, arboriculture, it's caring for trees, but it's also trying to care for the people and finding that balance between meeting a customer's needs and desires and doing what's best for the tree and communicating on behalf of the tree to the customer what you can do to try to make those two meet. And sometimes if people understand and believe you and they trust you, they'll say, you know what, you do whatever you think is best because you obviously know more about it than I do. But then there's other times where they may insist on having a view of some type, or there needs to be some type of clearance where you may have to cut maybe more than you would be good for the tree, but you try to reach a balance rather than cut it down, so to speak. Like what happens around power lines,
Yeah.
right? Like that's a classic
Yeah.
example where we sometimes have to, then there's a different objective there, right?
Okay. Okay. So Dwayne. So how do I start this? Anyway, I thought we built it at school. The school's just a little ways away from the house, so I came up with this great thought. I said, "Well, you know, I don't know if I heard it anywhere, but what we did is I introduced this to a couple of the teachers, and I said, how would you guys like to have an outdoor classroom?" And I said, look, I'm an arborist. I cut large. I have large sections of wood and logs and stuff. So and like I'll build something for you, and it's free, and maybe we can get a few of the volunteers in the weekend to come together, and that's a good way to everybody work together. So it was part of an old quarry. Like in Halifax there's a lot of quarries. I mean, we used to produce a lot of stone all down through the eastern seaboard, but anyway, so there was the remnants of this little shelf and stuff, so I put some blocks down and they started using it as an outdoor classroom. And I said, wow, these guys are really getting into this tree stuff, like this is awesome. And so what happened was I came up with this crazy idea. I said, well, we talked to a couple of the teachers and I said, look, I'm wondering if I could do a couple day trips with the guys, just, afternoon trip with the one class or two classes and down in the local park, Fleming Park. And they said, sure, we'll try it out. So we went into the forest and I said, okay, tree identification. So came up to these trees and there'd be some trees with soft bark and rough bark. And, we'd look at the hemlock and, don't peel any off, but there was an old one laying on the ground. I said, the Indians used to use this hemlock, I believe I heard, to use it for dye, to dye some of their clothes and maybe paint and stuff like that. And I
Hmm.
don't know if that's 100% true, but that's what I heard. So we spoke about bark, we spoke about, twigs, limbs, and different types of leaves. But one thing in forestry, what we did is, the forester was really he's a pretty neat guy, and he showed us different ways to identify trees. And if it wasn't by the buds and it was by the leaves, and a lot of times, the one cool thing was he said, "Well, here, guys, taste this." And so we're like, "What?" You know, and so all of a sudden we're having this oak limb, and we're tasting that, and it's like, "Ooh, that tastes really aged cheese or something." And then yellow birch was like more of a minty taste. So you could actually take a twig, stick in your mouth. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool. I can identify by taste. I called it the tree identification walk, and so we take them down the park and we try to identify trees different ways. I mean, of course, it was the old standard way. You're looking at the buds and the leaves and leaflets and and softwoods, so it'd be the whorls and trying to age the trees by different, counting the whorls on the trees. And one thing we sort of learned in forestry school was like you could actually smell. You could smell the tree. You could taste the limbs. So like especially for like a yellow birch, you can chew on
Yeah.
that and you can nice minty taste. And then one thing I do is, and the guys they thought I'm crazy. They said, "Shut your eyes." I mean, shut your eyes. So they all shut their eyes, and I said, "Now I want you to identify the tree by sound." So the one kid would say, "Oh, I hear the ocean." The other one would say, "Oh, I hear a train." I'm like, "Yeah, you're getting close." And then they couldn't really figure it out because it's so crazy. You know what I mean? Close your
Yeah.
eyes. I mean, you're supposed to be identifying something, right? Visually, everybody thought. So anyway, I said, "Well, that's called trembling aspen." And so I think they learn a lot. And then later on, what happened, Dwayne, is like I would do this every once in a while. A lot of times with fall, like fall colors, of course, is kind of an easy way to identify trees.
Yeah.
And after a while, I'd have more parents. Well, I'd just have just about the same amount of parents as kids, because they were like, "We're going for a walk with Mr. Talbot," right? And it was cool. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Well, that was something that Shigo was very into, and Shigo loved. He actually wrote a kids book for teachers to help teachers, and it
Really?
had, yeah, yeah. He was very big on it because that's the future, right? And he said the earlier you can help
Oh
create a
yeah.
connection with children with trees. They're gonna have more tree awareness and just be more tree oriented, right, as they grow older. And you know,
Oh wow.
and he had like, again, he would do tactile things. I don't know if he did the taste and the smell or the listen, which is cool, but he would, they would collect leaves or cones and, describe them and the shapes, and then how that, like, how different trees have different characteristics, right? Like, and so
Yeah.
he actually wrote
Yeah.
a whole program on it. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So it just, when you were telling the story, it reminded me of that. Of Did you ever meet Alex? By the way, did you ever hear him speak?
No, no. I mean, I do know who he is or who he
Yeah,
was, and but no, no, I never did. I mean, I read books by him, you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and he was, I don't know what would you say, the king. He was the master back
yeah,
in the late '80s, '90s. He was the person, to
yeah,
if you wanted to hear anything or not hear anything, be educated. Well, Alex Shigo was the man, and yeah, I would have liked to meet him. I heard he was.
yeah.
What did
It
he
was pretty.
always had a saying? But remember that
It,
saying he said, "You might have cut He said, "Hey, you may have cut more trees down than me, but you haven't cut more trees up than me." And that was one
yeah,
of his sayings, as he used
yeah,
to do autopsies on trees, and
yeah,
like areas like down the states where there was heavy traffic, where there was a lot of impact with vehicles. He used to actually they plant certain trees around there, and after years of getting hit by vehicle accidents, they used to pull the trees to the ground, and Alex Shigo would cut them up and try to identify, well, first off, which species would actually do well in a high impact vehicle accident impact area, right? And plant those trees in that area. I don't
right.
know if you ever heard that one or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was hired as he was a mycologist, and he was hired by the Forest Service to study what makes trees decay. Because, getting back to what you were talking about
Oh,
earlier, it
okay.
was a forest product, right? So that's why he
Yeah.
was he was a doctor of fungus, right? He was a fungi, and so they wanted to know what makes trees decay, how does decay introduced into trees. And so that injury became obvious, that there was a connection between wounding and decay entering the tree.
Oh, okay.
But then he also discovered that
Okay.
there was a great, like, decay would be introduced far deeper and be far more spreading at branch unions, like where branches and trunks connected.
Okay.
And as and
Yeah.
you're right, he would purposely injure trees and then leave them for various periods of time, and then he would cut them down and dissect them, right? And he did a lot of
Wow.
cutting of trees. You're right. And as his career went on, he discovered, and basically driving home from work and watching tree crews working and watching how they're cutting, he started realizing, particularly around pruning cuts, that because everybody was flush cutting at that time, and it was actually being taught because
Oh,
the trees from the outside seal over more quickly, like they close up. Some people would use the term heal, but they don't really heal; they seal. And when you
well,
cut
it's a
flush to the trunk, it actually,
compartmentalization.
right.
Yeah.
Right, it actually seals quicker, and those terms didn't exist before Dr. Shigo. Like, he invented those terms, right? Because
Really?
in order to
Okay.
communicate his
Yeah.
message, but and nobody was looking at the trees on the inside; they were only looking at them from the outside. So it was about 10 years when he started realizing, I think with the way tree work's being done isn't really the best for the tree. But he didn't want to dare say anything because he was nervous that, like, who is he? He's just a mycologist. He's not. And there was all the schools, all the books, everything said to flush cut. That's just one example. And it was a
Wow.
good 10 years. That's why he was always big on research and having data to back it up. And until he wrote an article, I can't remember, early 80s, where he just kind of breached this topic carefully. And he also happened to mention a bit about pruning paint that really didn't stop decay either. And that just,
Yeah.
I mean, when you switch from having to paint everything with tar, and you don't have to cut so close so it's to the trunk, it just went hand in hand. And you know, as the history books say, never before has such a long-standing technique been so quickly abandoned. And it was the first time where a doctor or you know someone in a research setting did something that really impacted the guy on the end of the saw. Like it really made a big difference to
Wow.
the you know the backbone of our industry is the guys out there actually stuffing chippers and cutting wood. Like, of course, you have a lot of owners and managers, and you have your entomologists and your pathologists and your consultants, but like the bulk of the work or the industry is represented by those of us that have got wood under our fingernails, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I remember I read something in the ISA magazine once, and I don't know what it is, but like probably of every 15 sort of conversations or articles and stuff I read, there's one that could have kind of sticks with you, and maybe it's you know maybe it's something that's you're seeing in your personal life or in your business life. And this guy said, "Well, I've been running a tree service for 16 years, but I might have been running it wrong." And so the thing is willing to change
Uh-huh.
is is the number one thing, is because our industry is still evolving.
Right.
And I always look at arboriculture as like the medical field. You have a tree, it's living. You have a human living, and what you do or other outside of effects or whatever is going to influence the health of the human and the tree. And I see, and I guarantee you look at that too, because a lot of times
Oh
I,
yeah.
you know, when I come in and I look, and the person goes, "Hey, is my tree healthy?" And I'm like, "What is this person really asking? Is my tree healthy?" "Well, yeah, it's healthy. Look at it. It's green, 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 but it has a huge hole, Winnie the Pooh hole in it. Is it structurally sound? No." So and so when you're doing a hazard inspection, you look at the roots and you look at the stem and the branch attachment. But I always say is that I tell people, I go, what I do, and it's the hidden little thing, is I look at the leaves. And it could be the lack of foliage, it could be undersized leaves, it could
Hmm.
premature fall colors. And I sort of compare it to when you're coming in to see your physician because you're a big old strong guy and you don't need to see a doctor. So anyway, eventually you go and have a checkup, and you're walking up and your doctor's looking at you, haven't seen you in a while, and he's looking at you and he's looking at your complexion, he's looking at your eye color. He's actually you're watching how you're walking up. Well, I look at the tree, and when I look at the leaves tell me a story. And if they're
Hmm.
beautiful and green, if they're full size, I mean, I can tell that there's a problem with the tree just by looking at the leaves a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I compare that to a physician looking at a human. And that's what and usually if that's an issue, that's usually something that you say, "Hey, hold it, let's look again at this tree. What's going on with it? How old is it? Is it hitting its maximum life expectancy, or was there some excavation or soil amended up against the trunk, or there's something else to look for."
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's there is quite a comparison, like humans and trees. I mean, you must use this all the time, Dwayne.
Well, you know, yeah, well, that's you know the podcast is called the Human Forestry Podcast. You know, and I often ask people, um, in when we're in session, I often because we are like people like a forest, like we help one another, we benefit one another, we connect, and I think if I think there's a lot of lessons we could draw from trees and how to live with one another, and that's something I ask my guests, like, have you ever learned something from trees, or can you think of things you've learned from being working with trees your whole life that you've kind of translated into how you work and live with people?
Hmm.
Like any similarities?
Yeah, Yeah. I'm. I don't think I've ever looked at it that way, but I'm always comparing them. You know,
Yeah,
it's I I I can't think of anything right now, but I will tell you one story. Stan Kochenoff, which just passed away, and he was really, really good friend of mine, and I know you knew him too. Um, he was a consulting arborist and a certified arborist, and he had an alphabet behind his name. I mean, this guy had more letters than anybody. But he told me, I said, gee, I got a farm outside the country, and I was looking for plant some trees, and I said, where, like, he goes, oh, I got this guy, he gives thousands of trees away. I said, thousands of trees? How can he do that? That's crazy. And so anyway, he said, "Here, I'll give you his number." Because I wasn't really looking. I guess I was looking for a cheap way of buying trees or different, varieties or whatever. And so anyway, I got talking to the guy, and out of the conversation, he was kind of crazy. And when I talk to people and say this, they're like, "Ooh." So I had a short conversation, and I will tell you, I don't know what his name is, and even if I did, I wouldn't say anything. I didn't like him at all. Actually, his personality was terrible. I mean, a person that sat close to trees and he's nasty. I mean, what kind of world are we living in here, right? Usually everybody that likes trees, beautiful people. Anyway, this guy was just contrary bugger. And but one little couple sentences I got out of him, he said,
yeah,
"Find the mother tree, you'll find the babies." And I'm like, "What the?" And so anyway, I said, "What the heck is this guy going on about?" Right? Find the mother tree. Like, and I'm like, I work a lot by myself, like in the farm. I got a big farm, blueberry acres of blueberries, and I'm like, "What's he mean? What's he mean? What's he mean? What does he
yeah,
mean?" And so finally, I was like, I know what he means,
yeah,
and what he means is find the mother tree.
yeah.
You'll find the little ones. Every time, Dwayne, you have a
Correct.
huge, majestic tree,
Exactly.
the little ones are just
Yeah,
straight by where they drop their seeds, or the birds have not really traveled too far with them. And they're supposed to have a network. All the roots are supposed to talk to the mother tree. I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is awesome, right? This is where I think trees are probably
yeah, yeah,
more educated, more complicated, more interesting than humans. Yes, we network, but the mother tree connects and talks to the babies, right? And I have this farm in a blueberry U pick. I have like 2 acres high bush blueberries. I have all kinds of different people that come in. I love it. I don't care about the money. I don't make any money. I lose money on that. But I I uh I dug these trees up. I found the mother tree. And I said to my buddy, I said, "Hey, could I take some trees out of your forest?" I didn't tell him about the story. I thought this guy'd think I'd be nuts. And so my son and I dug all these bare root trees in the middle of the winter. We dragged them back to the 100 sugar maples. And we screwed up. We got a couple ash. But anyway, and we planted them, and nearly every one of them grew, right? And you know what the coolest thing is? I lined a driveway with all these sugar maple. And I'll tell you, Dwayne, I didn't see it first, but there was, uh, and I said, "Oh my God, what am?" Every single tree had a crazy little
yeah,
lower branch that went in one direction. Every single tree had the same, like, it
yeah,
was genetics. It was like this stem went out at an angle and up and then out, and every single tree came from the one mother tree. And I had dug up 100 trees like this, and they all came from one mother tree. And after a while, I was cutting the grass and was like, man, I've seen this before. And then I took 2 trees and planted them in the city for my daughter, and I was like, they had the 2 limbs, and it was crazy. It was, but and I show that to people, and they're like shaking their head, like, how could that happen? And it's just like humans. You have a dominant gene in you, and you pass it on to your kids, be it
hmm,
blue eyes, brown eyes, I know dimple on your face like you got to think of. Anyway, Yeah, it's the same thing with trees. So I guess that's the story, Dwayne. Yes, I got a connection with the damn trees.
Yeah.
Okay, humans and trees. Yeah, we got something going on. You know.
Well, and even trees, how they compartmentalize their wounds or their injuries, and how wound wood actually is, strengthens the tree structurally around the area of the wound until it's as strong as it was before the wound, and then it stops producing wound wood. It goes back to producing normal wood, and even that, like, because we sustain injuries, if you will, or traumas, or
Yeah.
it could be in the way of emotions, but we have to live through that. And trees are such an example of surviving a severe storm. It wasn't the tree's fault. It got injured. It happened, and it can still live on, even with a cavity, and be very strong and stable, and even have a defect, and it's now become almost, it's an attribute, and I think
Yeah.
that there's some parallels that can be drawn there.
Yeah. The compartmentalization of wounds, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I never really looked at it like that, Dwayne. Like, I mean, you've been doing this for a while. I can see, right? Right? But yeah, that's right. It's like a scab on your arm, man. Right? That's it. Is
Yeah.
exactly. It closes
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
It's
Kind of.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and you know what I mean. Every time someone goes, "Oh, the tree's gonna heal," I'm like, "No, no, no, it isn't. Seals heal. Humans heal. Trees compartmentalize for God's sake." And the most educated people
Yeah.
around, and I don't put myself very close to them at all. And I will tell you, do not ever say that. This guy's like a doctor or something and something, and he's all, oh yeah, the tree's gonna heal. I said, no, it is. It's gonna compartmentalize. Come on, straighten it up. And
Yeah.
but I guess in a way it is healing, right? You know what I mean? Could you say that? I mean, maybe I'm, you
Well,
know,
it seals. It's sealing. It's sealing because they wall off and seal off and compartmentalize the injury, right? And they
yeah,
try to bring it back. They strengthen that area back what it was before the injury occurred, and
yeah,
and it takes time. That's the other interesting thing. It takes time. There was a guy. He was a past president of ISA, and he had a company, or a service, I guess you could call it. It was called Treehab. And
okay,
one of the things they would do, and you might relate to this, because he would take people that had sustained traumas of different types, and whatever it might be, but they'd go in the woods and they would find a tree that reminded them of themselves, and then they would be able to share why this tree was like them. But
wow,
they could share about their trauma, but they weren't talking about themselves. They were talking about the tree, but this tree has a hole in it, or this tree is bent and crooked, and this tree's like me because. And it was a way for them to have some healing and some counsel, and relieve some of this, or a way to talk about things they couldn't talk about ordinarily, right? By
wow,
connecting it to a tree.
wow, wow. That's
And that,
that's I
yeah,
never,
and
yeah,
we, yeah, you think in the woods, you go find a tree that you might see a tree that reminds you just of you, and then you
hey,
explain to someone why, like, why
yeah.
does this tree? Yeah,
Yeah. So here. Okay. So I'll ask you a question because you asked me a few. You know what I mean? And you think
yeah, yeah,
hugging,
sure,
you think hugging trees? That's like does anything to you?
absolutely.
Really?
100%, absolutely 100%. Especially if you're barefoot, or especially if you're,
You're not
the
saying get
physical
naked now.
connection. They're basically in.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could, I suppose, but I mean, certainly naked feet and naked hands. And naked hands are easy, but the feet sometimes it takes a little bit, and it can be a little cold or whatever. But it's absolutely no question, and they're antennas, right? They're
Yeah.
they're collecting light energy, solar energy, converting it into making mass, making lignin and cellulose, creating wood, and they're taking literally sun energy and turning it into a solid.
Yeah.
And we use that solid for wood. We use it to build things. We burn it, and we get sun heat. Literally, the sun fire releases from the tree when we do that. Like, there's so many fascinating things about trees that we kind of take for granted, or maybe don't think about. But when you touch that, like, there's a grounding that takes place, and that whole thing that's happening. They're photosynthesizing while you're doing this if the leaves are out, and that energy is being converted, and you're the cadmium isn't that far underneath the bark. You know, even on an old tree, if you get into a striation and wedge your fingers in there, kind of, you definitely get. You know, they release terpenes, they release gases that calm our nervous system. I mean, this has all been proven, right?
Wow.
So you know that's why you generally feel calmer in a forest because you literally breathe in a calming agent that calms our nervous system.
Wow. No, I remember on one of the ISA meetings we had they were talking about urban forestry and you know the benefits of trees and stuff like that. And one thing is
Yeah.
like crime, like in green areas, crime is less.
Yep.
And and I
Yep.
you know I here in this in HRM Halifax, like with all the development, I think we're second to BC or something on like new construction of high rises and I don't know, it just you know cut there's and the trees aren't being replaced. It doesn't seem anyway like it's this you know concrete jungle, and yeah, I keep reflecting on that conversation that we were having many years ago about you know making it green, you know, and planting more trees, and that and it has something to do with what you're saying there, Dwayne, on the effects of the trees. I don't think it's just the green of the tree. I think there's more to it. There's something to do with it. I
Yeah.
you know, maybe it's the gases that they give off. Maybe it's the oxygen they suck, you know, or give off, and the carbon dioxide they suck in. I don't
Yep.
know. I mean, they give off oxygen too
Yep.
through the roots, right? So maybe I don't know. It's kind of crazy. But I mean, you know, you know,
Absolutely. It's
some.
all of it. It's all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. You know, Dwayne, a lot of times people ask me, like, how did you ever get into this? I mean, you know, you started the conversation like that because you always do, right? But anyway, the situation here is that I'd have to say I lucked into it, Dwayne. I think I lucked into a business, and people go, oh. I quite frequently when I talk to people, I don't care what they are. They could be a crown prosecutor, could be a police officer, could be, you know, a veterinarian, could be whatever. I don't care what, you know. I always ask them one question. I ask them what they do, right? And I said, "Do you like doing what you do?" I just ask them, and they go,
Hmm.
I don't know if they know what I'm trying to get at." And I see, in arboriculture, it's not a job, it's a calling. And I remember
Hmm.
at you know we were at an ISA meeting once, and my young son, I brought him. I think he was only about 12 or something, right? I just wanted to, you know, he was. You know, it's kind of crazy how I got him into, you know, well, he just I think he was 3 years old or 2 years old. He was always with me all the time. He'd run the bucket when he was like two. I'd put a block of wood in the bucket so he could run the controls, eh? And he'd be running the controls at like 3 years old. I'd have to pick him up and put him in the bucket. And I remember one time I I said, "Son, come here." He goes, "What?" And I had like a you know a 254 or 266 Husqvarna there, you know the old days, and I said, "Here, I want you to
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
your hands on my hands. I'm gonna cut this block." And I would cut through the block. Then he squeezed my hands when I was cutting with the chainsaw. And then after I cut it, I go, "What do you think?" He goes, "That was awesome. That was awesome." And you know, later, when he was about 12 or something, or maybe he's 14, I brought him to an ISA meeting. And I don't know. I don't know if you were there. There was everybody was there. And you know, they go, we had to stand up. And I said, okay, let's stand up, introduce yourself. Remember those old days, Dwayne? You know, and so I
Hmm.
it was my turn. I stood up. Hey, Clarence, and I said, "Oh, you old bugger, sit down. We know who the heck you are," right? And my son, it was his turn. He stood up, and he goes, "I'm that guy's son," right? Pointing at me. And he said, "I've been exposed to arboriculture since I came out of the womb." And That's what happens. Like you started this whole podcast with how did I get into it? Well, I got into it by I really was it mistake? Was it just I went down a different road? Was someone bumped me off the road? I don't know, or the planet fell on me and maybe go somewhere. But my son got into it because I love arboriculture and I love trees.
Right.
And someday, you know, like I'm older now, right? I mean, I don't know how the heck that ever happened. I sometimes think about my demons. And I think about the stone if I ever had one. And I think about what would be put on it. And I will tell you something right
Mm,
now. There'll be something about trees, the keeper of trees.
right.
The shepherd of
Yeah.
trees, the protector of trees. I don't know, Dwayne. Arboriculture. I know this. You know, we're on a lot of subjects here, but you know, whoever's listening to this,
It's all
hello,
good.
everybody. That and if you could put up with my BS for a while. Anyway, I'll tell you something right now. This is not work. This is a lifestyle. This is what we do. We eat it, we breathe it, and we breathe. It's we take it in and we breathe it out, and that's what we're about. And you'll find 90,
Yeah.
probably 5% of people that are arborists or you know qualified arborists or just tree guys or groundies. They stay with it because of the love of it, and it's like an addiction, but it's a damn good one. And
Yep. Yep.
Dwayne, this is how I met you, right? I mean, we met long, long time ago, and you know,
Yeah.
like I remember one time, you told us, you said, we're brothers. We all think the same about trees, the care of trees, the love of trees, and we're brothers. We're in this little family together. It doesn't matter if you're way on one side of the world or the other world or on the other side of Canada. It's we all think the same. We're in the game together, and we're in this game called
Yep.
arboriculture, and it's I don't we've for all kinds of different reasons we got here, but we're not leaving. you know. So I don't know.
Well, we're all dying to get out. That's the only way to get out.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It sounds like cemetery, eh? We're all dying to get in there. So,
Well,
but
it's that whole dash thing, right? It's the dash. It's not there's the two numbers on that stone, right? But it's not those two don't mean that much. It's that little dash in the middle, right?
yeah,
That's what matters the most, and how
that's
you spent your time on that dash, and what people have to say about you, and what people thought, and how you made people feel, and what you chose to do, and if I feel fortunate, like you do, that again, I would say luck, coincidence. It was not, I didn't plan it, but I found myself in it. And I've never left the career. It's really the only career I've ever known. I never did have any other career. It's always been in the trees. And that whole saying, when you do what you love, you don't work a day in your life. And that I'm just blessed and so grateful for that, and I know a lot of people. The people that I've known the longest, because I've been in this industry, I've never left it. They're the same feelings, right?
yeah.
And Larry Hall said he thinks that once someone has been in arboriculture for 5 years plus or 10 years, something, and he used the term mystical, like you don't know what it is, but
Oh
it's
wow.
something mystical occurs. And he said it's there's a spiritual or mystical or energetic element to it that I think is, and well, he actually said he thinks it's imparted mystically by the trees.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
know in the past, like, we were having this discussion before this discussion, and we were talking about sports and stuff. And like, I used to train kickboxing. My brother was a light heavyweight kickboxing champ of Canada, maritime tough guy. We got the fighting in our blood, But I used to work out every day, 3 to 9 hours a day, 7 days a week, 7 years.
Yeah.
And it was just, and I tried to get back to that last year, and I was dedicated. I was working on it all the time. And someone said to me, you can't get into something. You can't just get into it. It has to be a lifestyle. And so working out in karate, you have to have the. And I know guys that are, black belts and all this and that. And Jim Maloney here, a good friend of mine's the highest ranking Weichi-Ryu karate instructor in Canada, native, wonderful guy, and it's a lifestyle. And I tried to get back into it, and it, you know what, Dwayne, I I can't get into the lifestyle. You know what I mean? It has to be something you breathe. And but tree
Yeah.
service, man, I got that lifestyle. Like all I think is trees. Like I'm listen. I'm leaving you today. I got 60 fruit trees to plant. You know what I mean? And that's not enough. I
Yeah.
got like 100 apple trees, 45 peach trees. That my wife's like just shakes her head. You know what she said to me? We got this huge farm, 430-acre farm. Eh? She said to me, she said, don't plant all the trees without me. She saved some trees so I can
Oh
plant
wow.
them. Yeah. And somehow I'm giving this craziness to my wife. Not just me, Wade, and you. The family members catch this stuff too. It's contagious, baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And right now, like I know we didn't touch a lot about my, Tree Works, my company and stuff, but I have a, quite successful, and I believe that I, I I believe the guy above me helped me out. Trials and tribulations of that I went through as childhood in foster homes, and here I am. I have 25 employees and 11 bucket trucks, and I take one of the lowest pays in my company because I really don't care about the money. I care about tree service and the welfare of my workers and stuff.
Yeah.
And I have three kids. Well, they're young adults. I still refer to them as kids, but and
Yeah. Yeah.
my oldest one's an arborist, right? And the other
Yeah.
one, well, he's super smart. I mean, he's has his master's in informatics. I didn't even know what that is. I had to look that thing up, right? Now this guy's like A+ student. I mean, he could be probably way higher than
Yeah.
an old lone arborist, And then my daughter, she's in there. She's like a female Clarence. Oh my God, that's how my wife describes her. And of course my name's Clarence, right? I'll let you know. And it's so yeah, I'm blessed. What I'm trying to get at, come to the point, Clarence. Jeez, um, I have my whole family working in the industry, and you know what? They
Yeah.
love trees. And you know what, Dwayne? Like I said, there was a lot of trial and tribulations in my life, but if I ever did anything right, and a lot of times people say to me all the time, and I get confused when people say this because oh, you're so successful. I, I mean, what's success? Like, I think success in my life is that I raised three really good, well-rounded, educated. Like, I put them through university, I put them through training, and educated people that want to make a contribution in society. And they do this a lot of times through tree service. We service residential work, commercial
Mhm.
work, and they're breathing the same air as you and I. And
Yeah.
I think that's what success is having wonderful kids and a wonderful wife also, and the kids working in the industry. Like, who would ever think that I'd have all three kids working with me? I mean, who? You know, I
Yeah.
think maybe that guy when he pat me on the back, maybe I don't know, maybe I deserved a part of it. Because I introduced him to arboriculture and the right way of doing things. So, but it is a good
Yeah.
feeling, Dwayne, to have my family involved in my business. So it's quite a remarkable thing. So, and we're definitely looking for
It is. Yeah.
future too, right? Doing this. So, but you have any other questions
Yep.
there?
Yeah, well, I'm lucky to have my son working for me as well, or working with us, right?
Yeah.
And my youngest son is a fish and wildlife officer, which is he's in the
Oh,
woods all the time, right? So they
oh yeah,
and
yeah,
he still climbs and does tree work. Like so, my youngest son who do work all like done lots of tree work growing up in the business, right?
yeah,
With as part of the like he worked at tree services through university and college and in between high schools years, but so now he's got the equipment. He's got a bag with the gear, and he gets asked all the time wherever he goes to do a job, and he's removing trees for fellow officers or for the sergeant or whatever, and he can't get away from it, right?
yeah. I know.
And he loves
Well,
it, and that's the thing. He loves it.
yeah, it's like going to a barbecue, right? Hey, man. Next thing you know, it's an hour, 3 hours talking about trees, right?
Yep.
It's a good thing. I mean, you know what I mean. Like that's why and also it's an addiction. Well, it's a calling. I think it's a calling. That's what it is. It's a way of life,
Yeah.
right? And it's a good way of life.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, yeah. So.
You know, you mentioned that you said something about asking people if they like what they do or love what they do, and whoever it is, I think it was something like that. Like, do you like your job, or what about, or do you love your job? What answers do you get?
Well, I get them. Well, it's all over the place, and I think Dwayne to answer why I asked that is I'm trying to talk from my heart, right? Like you know me, Dwayne. Like
Yep.
the people are listening to this don't know me, but I'm sincere, right? I come from my heart. I don't want anything from
Yep.
anybody. I'd like to give everything. I'm a giver. Okay, I get a
Hmm.
good feeling when I give stuff away. It just makes me feel good, and I don't want to give all my wealth away. I worked hard for that. Come on, we got to keep building. But the main reason that I ask that is I want to know: are you happy? I want to know, are you happy?
Right.
Are you really doing like see, you grow up, you have these little feeling the ideas, oh, I want to be this, I want to be that. Go to the school, man. Ask them, I want to be a fireman, I want to be this. Well, later on when you become an adult, like are you doing what you thought you were going to do when you were a kid? Like, I'm trying to make the connections. And it's
Yeah.
and also are you doing exactly not just something that you see in a fireman go down the road and you want to be like him in a loud screaming truck, fire truck. You want to do something that you wanted to do all your life. And some of these people, when I ask that question, they go, yeah. Like I was, where was I? I mean, we bought some a building, and I was talking to the lawyer, and the lawyer's like, oh, you got to sign this letter and blah blah blah. And I said, okay. And I said, hey, uh, do you like what you do? She goes, I love it. And that is the answer I'm looking for. I love it. I love
Right.
being a lawyer. I love this. I love that. Because it's exactly what you just said a little while ago. It's not work if it's a calling, man. It's what you want to do. You probably do it free, but
Yeah.
I mean you got to pay your bills, right? And so I get answers all over the place. They'll say, yeah, I like it. And a lot of times, when the people that I react, they ask, I can feel something from them. I can feel like, I don't know. It's
Ah.
not a connection, but it's like there's something there, man. Like I can feel that it's more
Yeah.
than just a job, like pushing a paper and here's your pen, now get out. It's like they're sincerely,
Yeah.
like if it's not I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing. But I mean, I've been asking people a long time, you like what you do? Man, I love it. I love dogs. I'm a veterinarian, and I just always wanted to be a veterinarian. And or I had a wounded animal when I was a kid or whatever. And the answers are all over the place. But
Yeah.
generally, I think there's a reason why I ask. I'm getting this sort of feeling that you actually love what, and it's sort of like in a way, it could be breaking the ice to just have a conversation with them because I'm a very,
Hmm.
sociable person. And and then maybe they'll ask me, "Hey, do you like what you do?" And I'm like, "Whoa, don't open that door, baby." Right? You know, because us, Dwayne, we don't shut up. So. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's all over the place, really. And also, Dwayne, I mean,
Yeah.
we touched upon this too, right? I mean, guys, listeners, let's just don't know who they all are, but I'll tell you, arboriculture guys aren't 100% sane. We're a little off. I think maybe that energy from the trees are doing something. I'm thinking that, the sawdust had an effect on me over years, but I don't know. I asked my doctor. He said, nah, no, that wouldn't have made you like you what you are. I think it's the effects of the trees. And you know what?
Yeah.
That's wonderful you brought that up because I, I, I think it is. I think the trees, I think they reach back to you. And it's crazy. I mean, I know people don't want to hear that. They're like,
Yeah.
no, there's no Martians, and we're the smartest people in all the planets, and we're the ruler of the world. I mean, holy shit! Look around, ruler of the world. I mean, what's these people, man? They can't rule worlds, right? So yeah, maybe you're not too far fetched. These friggin' trees are like in control. I don't know, right? You know. Yeah. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
all different degrees of
Absolutely.
insanity in this arboricultural world. That's why we get along so well, right? We're all
Yeah.
insane
Exactly.
in a good way, not violent.
No. No. I agree. It's well, energy and motion, right? And there's trees. The other thing about trees, is they're that I think there's so many ways that we are connected to trees and have these long historical connections that go back for since the dawn of mankind. And we live like you were mentioning earlier. You got a 600, 800 year old tree, and someone's in it. They're at the 200 mark, and the tree's got it's not even half done its lifespan, and they want to cut it down. It's like, look, like you represent a very small part of this tree's life, and you're not even you need to hopefully consider that you're a visitor on its life's journey. And I think the fact that trees and anyone, if they take a moment to think about it and they realize an old mature tree, or not even that old, a 200-year-old tree, and they realize this tree's been here way longer than I'm going to be alive, and it's still going to be here way longer after I'm gone. There's something about that because there's nothing else in nature. I mean, mountains and stuff, but they're not living in the way trees are.
Yeah.
And
No,
that I think is profound.
yeah, and Dwayne, like I have this conversation so many times, and what I told them, I tell people, I go, look, these are the annual rings of the tree, and you only made up about this much, like not even a quarter of an inch of its annual growth. And so, what gives you the right to cut this tree down? And
Yeah.
you just you shouldn't have that right. You that I don't know. And you know what? Uh,
Uh,
I always say to people, we are the shepherds of the trees. We are the shepherds, just like a
yeah.
flock, or I don't know what sheep are. There's a flock of sheep.
Yep.
Anyway,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're the shepherd. You keep them in line. You push them in the right path down the road. Well, we're the keepers of the trees, and we truly are. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes this, like. I think in a way too, like my friend is a native, First Nation, and is a wonderful guy, Jim Maloney, and you know they had a relationship with trees, right? And I think we
Yep.
have a very similar relationship with trees as the natives did. They looked at the trees
Yeah.
in a certain way, right? and we look at them in a
Yeah.
certain way. And like I say, we're the shepherd of the trees. It sounds crazy. Some people are like, wow, man, when you go hug a tree, well, sure, I'm going to do that a little later on, but let's have a chat right now. But the thing is and people can't get it. And it's like like you asked me a question about, well, how what do people say when, you ask them if you love you like your business? Well, it's the same thing as, like, there's certain people, when I'm looking at residential work, commercial work, a lot of times it's like, why do you want to cut this tree down? Well, I think it's unsafe. Whoa, now I got an avenue to get in to protect the tree, well, I'm building a high
Right.
rise. Okay, I don't, and so the thing is there's certain people are approachable to keep the tree, and there's certain people that aren't. And a lot of times
Yeah.
it's your prodding and trying to find out, is there an avenue where you could work somehow to you know what I mean, to do your job in the most efficient way or the best way or what you would consider the best way, and I don't know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's happiness and sadness, really. I mean, you're cutting the trees down and then you're saving trees, and it's
Yeah.
all over the board, right? So, so yeah,
Well, and I think you made a good point. I think you made a good point about the First Nations, for example, and there's other cultures, and I don't know how far back you'd have to go in time, but I guess I'll use the term Western civilization and including us in that. And I don't know, it's a broad term, but I think we've lost some of the ability to connect with the energetic side of things or the spiritual side of things or the mystical side of things. And when you listen to First Nation groups, like they had more of a connection, and it was shared and it was discussed. And you get accused of being woo woo or weird a little bit, like you're a tree hugger or something's wrong with you if you're connecting with that. And I think we need to come back to some of that, because I don't think the fifth, the sixth dimensions, the trees are closer to that than we realize, and we can connect with that if we're open to it, if we're taught on. I think haven't been taught how to do it anymore. We don't.
yeah,
And as
yeah,
arborists, we're in amongst it, right? So we're getting it osmotically, kind of like we can't help but feel it, and it vibes off of us, and we get, and there's something there. But even there's probably more room for us to explore those connections. But you're getting into a different realm of it's a different thing, and it's not comfortable for everybody, right?
yeah, yeah. And I 100%. And I think we're on the first step, like a baby step, you know. And it's too bad that,
Yeah.
like there wasn't more discussion about trees and the benefits of this, of what trees could do for us. There's just it's so it's not at an arm's distance, at 5 arms distance. And Dwayne, there was another thing that I've been with this blueberry U pick I have down here. I have
Yeah.
a lot of different people that come through, and there's a lot of people that are in touch with a lot of stuff, and like natural medicine, like how much
Yes.
natural medicine that the natives and First Nations and Oriental people have, like pine needles, like
Yep.
dandelions, like companion plants to the trees and stuff like that. And it's crazy
Yep.
because I have
Yep.
these heavy chats, and I actually start reading a little bit about this, and it's just like, your medicine, all this junk that you have. You go to the drugstore and you see bags and bags and bags of all this shit. Here's your one pill for this, and this counter pills that pill, and this one's that one, and oh yeah, don't take this one before you take that one. And it's like, holy geez, some are actually derivative from plants, but some all
Yeah.
that stuff is right there. It was kind of funny because
Yep.
my wife's Italian. She's first generation Canadian, and her two older sisters were born in Italy during the war, and one of her sisters writes short stories, and they're actually and it's only a page and a half. just about something of her childhood, and it's
Yeah.
in English, it's in Italian, and there's a glossary. Like you could reference words, so you could actually teach yourself how to
Yeah.
speak Italian. But she took different events, and what was really cool, right? In Italy, there wasn't a doctor every town, but there was in her by
Right.
her town there was a hermit. Okay, and this hermit lived by himself,
Right.
and he was a naturalist, and he had all the plants for
Yeah.
everything you ever wanted, and you would go and see him.
Yeah.
And there was a I'm going to give you
Yeah.
one of these books. You're going to love it. Okay, there's all kinds of stories. It's just anyway. If you had a stomach ache, you would go and see him. If cuts, infections, that was before
Yeah.
antibiotics, right?
Yeah.
You know, the antibiotics is out there.
Right.
So what happened is you would go and you
Yeah.
would trade off maybe some labor and help him in his garden. You would bring a couple chickens, be some
Yeah.
hens. You would bring him
Yep.
firewood, whatever he would trade off, and he would give you medicine.
Yeah.
And you know what, Dwayne? Like I know this is off the tree stuff, but it's still in the same ball field.
No, this
But
is perfect.
yeah, because the thing is,
Absolutely.
all of this stuff, and if people could get more in touch, and me myself, I'm digging up dandelions, and I'm gonna be eating them, and I'm making tea out of them. And I'm going to do all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff this summer as I've learned all kinds of plants. All these weeds that
Yep.
I thought were terrible. Your best thing you could ever have in your life. And that natural stuff
Yep.
that you can grab. Like, man, I don't know who's going to listen to this thing, right? And listen, probably shut it off about 2 minutes into this podcast. But anyway, if you make it this far, I'm going to tell you, you should look into natural medicine because you know what? I think
Yep.
we're going to live a lot longer and a lot healthier and a lot happier if we went along and started, dealing with the trees. The trees can provide us a lot of this stuff too, right? Pine needles and blah. I
Yep.
don't know.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know a lot about this, but there's all kinds of different weeds and stuff and seeds and everything that
Yep.
it's right in front.
Yep.
Your medicine cabinet is in your backyard and you don't know
Yep.
what you're looking for.
Yeah, there's a lot more people getting along that and I do agree with it. And there's no question. It's another one of those lost arts. And there's all sorts of conspiracies as to why and this and that. But whatever. The point is, you can still find the information. You can still learn about it. And
Yeah.
and I think we are seeing a change in how all that works. And I imagine. I don't know if the pharmaceuticals are threatened by that or not, but I
Well,
mean,
they are. Of course, it's a
there's
billion
always
dollar
going to be a
business.
place for certain things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
You know, have you seen? Speaking of books, have you seen this one? Shigo's Tree Pithy Points.
No, 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 I didn't know. Oh,
It's one of his not so known. It's one of his not so known books. I'll send you one.
oh,
It's a book on. It's brief messages on tree biology, tree care, and philosophy.
okay.
And whenever you had to spend any time with Shigo, you'd end up talking about exactly the conversation would go almost exactly like ours has today, where you'd talk about tree stuff, and then you'd end up talking about life stuff, and you'd talk about what you love, and you talk about love of trees, and then you talk about even more different stuff. So there's 950 pithy
Wow.
points, 950. And we started a tradition this season of having our guests pick one of them, pick a number between 1 and 950, and we'll read it and see what it is. So pick a number between 1 and 950.
Two.
Two. So tree pithy point number 2. Trees are plants that are perennial, woody, shedding, and compartmented. Trees usually have a single stem over 3 meters tall.
Okay.
And because you picked a low number, there's actually 950 written pithy points, but there's
Okay.
80 some tree pithy pictures. And so there's a number two. It's a picture of a forest. It looks like a eucalyptus forest. So and underneath is tree pithy picture point number two. So you get
Hmm.
two because you picked a low number. Trees got their genetic codes while growing with many associates.
Wow.
That's tree pithy point number picture tree picture pithy point number two. Trees got their genetic codes while growing with many associates. That was
Huh.
an important word to Shigo, right? Like he called his business, his publishing, his book sale business, Shigo Tree
Yeah.
and Associates, and that was because of the
Yeah.
connections that he found that trees have with all sorts of soil organisms, particularly multiple different kinds of fungus and other trees, the whole mother tree you were talking about, and all those that community you would call associates, and and even humans are part of that.
Yeah. So to touch upon that is, I think what he's touching upon, which I think some people know and some people don't know, is
Yeah,
allopathy, right? And the discretion of a herbicide,
yeah,
from tree roots, right? Then everybody knows black walnut has, the strongest
yeah,
allopathy there is.
yeah,
So
yeah,
the association or disassociation,
yeah,
right? It could be either or. One could be a companion, one is a
yeah,
competitor. So what you're
yeah,
doing is the walnut doesn't want any competitors, and they don't want any buddies. Okay, they don't
yeah,
like people, or excuse me, other plants. So what they want to do is have the space. So what they're doing is,
yeah,
if people don't know what that is, allopathy is that it's a excretion of a herbicide from the roots of plants that actually
yeah,
prevent other plants to grow
yeah,
close. So pine
yeah.
trees you'll find a lot of times have that. You don't hear it discussed very much,
Correct.
but you'll see pines equally spaced in the forest, and they weren't planted. They grew that way, and maybe their defense is that their
Right.
defense is shade. So they're shading it out so none of the trees can, because that tree itself is a sun worshiping tree. Its offspring are sun worshiping. They can't get sun, so they die, right? And they're spaced out. Now, hemlock, of course, has
Mm-hmm.
a unique situation that it's it's shade tolerant. So in that forest of hemlock, you have a huge hemlock growth. Plus, you have small hemlock because they can live in that, because they have the diversity, or they're diversified, that they can deal with shade and they can deal with sun. They love sun and they
Yeah.
can handle a lot of shade. So yeah, you could see how the plants push each other
Right.
out or encourage other plants. So what he's saying, yeah, I get it. That's what I'm going to say. I get it. I get what he's saying. So I'm glad that you read that to me. And I mean, you could
Yeah.
probably read the whole book, and I don't think I get it all, but but I see it. And you know what, when we're talking about arboriculture, and because I came from a forestry background, right? You're talking forestry too. So our arboriculture and forestry are hand in hand here.
Yeah.
Like and you asked me a question, hey, how did forestry
Yeah.
push into arboriculture? Well, of course it did. That's, but the thing is I think that our forestry has sort of a big base. Just it's very similar. Like it's where the roots are in, like a tree in the ground, right? It's that's it's like
Yeah.
horticulture. And horticulture, so in arboriculture, there's generally two main roads that people take to get into arboriculture. One is forestry, or one is horticulture. And horticulture, both of them
Right.
are, and so what, as someone explained to me
Right.
once before, they said, Clarence, when you look at arboriculture, horticulture, forestry, you think of a big, huge bureau and all kinds of drawers, right? And one is horticulture, one is grass management,
Mm-hmm.
one is seed, maybe seed studies or planting seeds or diversity and different seeds or cloning. I don't know anything about seeds, so I don't know. One is arboriculture. So we are a drawer in this big bureau, and that's our specialty, is that drawer, you know and
Mm-hmm.
but all of it's all connected. It's all
Mm-hmm.
one bureau, but we have there's specialties in each one. And I would say that's why a lot of
Right.
times there's so much overlap into
Yeah.
it, because we're all one bureau. It's just that we're one drawer. I don't know if you've ever heard that
Right.
before, you know, but
Right.
after all these years doing this, you hear a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, speaking of which, there's one last thing, and I know you want to get planting trees, but and I'd like you to just share a little bit about the Halifax explosion. I know you weren't alive for it, but then what one tree in particular that you got interviewed because of, and how many times you found that, or just a little bit about the history of that and how it's been practicing tree work in Halifax. Being living where trees are alive that were there when the largest explosion outside of a nuclear explosion existed and happened in the world.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I remember once. Look, when I started out, I knew I had to work hard. I had a hard upbringing, and so I used to work like 7 days a week, light to dark, and so anyway, it was just, oh, I could get another tree done. I could get another tree. It's only 6 o'clock. We're taking on a huge tree, right? Anyway, here we are. We're cutting. Finally, got to the base of this big monster silver maple, and then, man, I'm telling you, there was a or silver maple I've never seen. I've never seen a silver maple that big ever, ever, ever in my life. And I mean, this it was bigger than a truck bonnet, full size truck. And so we were cutting away, and I was like, geez, what the heck? And sometimes, Dwayne, I know it sounds crazy, but when I'm cutting a big tree down, right, the very end of the tree, like when I'm taking the stub down, it fights with me. It's like, hey, sucker, you're not taking me out this easy. I live, a lot longer than you, or what it is. It's like something, man. I feel that energy. It's crazy, but I don't say too much
Yeah.
because people, think I'm more insane than like they think I am or something. Anyway, so what happened is we were we were up the north end, right at the in around the Narrows, right where that explosion would have happened. And I've looked at pictures, and I said, I everything was just like stubs. They were about 20 feet high or something like that. And when that explosion came through, it ripped everything. Look at the pictures. Just go look at some old pictures.
Yeah.
In 1917, that's what it was, right? And there's only certain species of trees that would have lived. Silver maple's one, and it would have whoop right out. And so anyway, I'm cutting this monster down, and I'm like, geez, I got like a 3 foot bar, man. I'm cutting this sucker down, and there's and sparks coming out. And I'm like, gee, what the heck, Well, I guess it's just not a big old tree fighting me at the end, right? And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, and I kind of looked at the center of the heartwood, and I noticed all this debris. It looked like, I don't know. It was crazy. It looked like metal fragments. It looked like, I don't know what it was. It looked like combination of some stuff you dig out of the backyard. And I'm looking at it going,
Yeah.
man, what? How did this ever get in the center? There's no hole. There's no cavity. Someone didn't put it in to fill a hole, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. So anyway, I'm like, and then I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, man, that could have been some of the stuff that was embedded in the tree during the Halifax explosion. And I said,
Yeah.
no. I go, no, no, no. And I should have probably went back and started counting the rings, but the guy came in with an excavator and hauled the stump out. It was for, they were going to do some development, right? took this big tree down. And so I gave the guy some wood. He was desperate for firewood. And I called him up and said, hey, man, like, you got any more of this wood kicking around? Like, I want to come over and like count the rings. And he's like, geez. He said, my brother used a trailer. I had it on. He said, that old shit. And I, excuse the language, all old stuff. I threw it out. I'm like, damn. So all of a sudden, Maclean's magazine did an interview. And I will tell you, it was one of the worst ones I've ever. That's why I never ever let anybody put any articles out before I proofread them. Right, that's a lesson for everyone. But anyway, yeah. So that was all the particles that would have smacked that tree. I swear to God, by the size of it, I know people are like, oh, your silver maple's not going to last that old. Well, maybe it did. You know, it was monstrous. I've never seen a silver maple ever that size, and yeah. So I don't know. I lost chance. I could have, young and full of piss and vinegar. I mean, I should have. I mean, I guess if that was today, and I probably would have took a cross section, and had it up at my shop, and labeled off every year and rate, the year of the explosion. But anyway, that was kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We had a guest earlier on talking about, and he was he's probably one of our younger guests that we've had on, and we were talking about the fatalities in the industry. I just thought it'd be nice, like you've been out a long time and you're still alive. What do you're aware of the fact that people die doing this work, and we all know that. What's been your secret to surviving 37 years doing tree work?
Well, keep in mind that I worked probably another 10 years in forestry before that too, right? So, hey, I'm not 200 years old, don't
Right.
worry. But yeah, so anyway, well, I'll tell you what, Dwayne, every time I bring a new employee in, I have a couple lines I say to them. I said, look, son, I got to tell you something, okay? This is the second most hazardous occupation, most dangerous occupation in North America. And, you know, well, what's number one? Crab fishing. Okay, I can see these two guys going into a barn and having a big row. But anyway, um, but I tell them that there's 110 ways of dying on this job, and you might be able to show me 111. Okay, so I don't know how to explain to you that this is a serious, serious, dangerous occupation. So please do not use equipment till you're instructed. Death comes from above. Okay, no one ever looks up. People are dropping blocks, they're dropping limbs. It's danger from falling, danger from being chipped. And a lot of times, what I do too, Dwayne, is, and I heard this many times, but the truth is, and a lot of people, like people that are listening to this, this podcast, they're not in our industry. They don't, some of the stuff we're going to say is like probably a shocker to them. And it's like, I bring the guy up and I said, look at this chipper. You see that chipper? See that sign right there? Every one of those stickers that are on here, someone had to probably die to get that sticker on there.
Mm-hmm.
And that sticker was here because someone
Yep.
died. And I just look, crushing. Someone crushed their foot. Someone got electrocuted. Someone got chipped. And I said, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, like, I'm glad I'm seriously glad you brought this up, because I really in this industry. So I had a guy, we do, so there's no training here. Okay. There's no training, any schools here. We have to train everybody how to tie their shoelaces, how to walk, how to put chaps on through chainsaw. Sometimes we luck out with a guy that, a lot of times that people do come, they got all kinds of bad habits. So it's good sometimes to start them out our way, which is safe. Anyway, we had this guy, and we bring this fella in. He's really good climber, good trainer, local guy. And of course, we brought you in 100 times too before in the past. So don't get, keep that smile on your face. Anyway, so a buddy of his came in, and I didn't know who he was. But I got into a chat with him, and we were doing aerial rescues from the bucket and from bucket to bucket, and we had a big fun day. I bought a bunch of pizzas, and they had a wonderful time. And and the guy said, "Well, like I'm associated with the Department of Labor." I said, "Oh," and he said, "It's always a mystery, and this is not just for like here in Halifax. This would be very common, probably everywhere, a lot of places, and some places not at all." But he said, for an industry that is so like second most dangerous occupation, right? He said it is amazing, and we can't understand it, that there's no fatalities. We have very few people getting injured, and he said we can't understand, and he said we we credit that to the people in the industry like you and my son and my other son and some of my arborists and leaders, that we they they understand, they breathed in what we were breathing out, is that this is a dangerous occupation. You slow down, learn how to do it right, do it safe, if and learn from mishaps and other people's mishaps. And but this guy said to me, he said, geez, and I said, well, we developed our own code of practice. The arborists made that, right? We developed that in 1993 here in the Maritimes, and we were all involved. And we took a lot of our history of accidents and blah blah blah, and we developed this code of practice, and that's what we base our safety sort of decisions, or concerns, or whatever, we base it on that. And I don't know. This guy just said, your industry, like we were on this large job at Dalhousie University, and they had these, oh, I don't know who they were, some safety super company that was in there from Toronto that was managing this project. So anyway, they came in, and I said to her at the very end after we did the job, and I said, you asked for this credential and that credential and this, but in arboriculture, it's like an onion. It's so layered, and there's so much training. Like my daughter summed it up really well. Like she came working with us, and she said, "Hey, Dad, in 4 weeks, I had to take 6 different courses. Climbing course, chainsaw, electrical awareness, fall arrest, everything and anything you could ever think." And that was prerequisite to just even get on the site. And so I was talking to this lady, safety person in the safety company, and I said, this is the second most hazardous, like most dangerous occupation. And she goes, really? And I said, yeah, yeah. She goes, well, when I looked it up to try to find out information on this, there was one tiny, like a paragraph on tree care. That's it. That's all that they have. It's Department of Labor. They don't even know what we do. So they come on our site, and you know what they do? They tear our traffic control people apart, because um, because they don't know. They know everything about traffic control, so they tear those guys. Oh, the signs aren't the right distance. Oh yeah, I can see someone's going to really get hurt on that one, right? I mean, yeah, cars are driving down the road. It's going to safeguard everybody. I mean, but what's 1 foot of distance between the signs? They're all there. But yeah, I think, I guess, to answer your question, I think we know it's a very dangerous occupation. We we work as a team. And I mean, that could be like, I spent years in the reserves, and my son was in there 8 years, and it was all about working as one, as a team. And we work as a team, and we're always concerned about the safety of other members, because that there in turn may even be the safety of us, right? Because if this guy's doing something careless,
Hmm.
this might add on to something else that'll become dangerous for the whole crew. And so yeah,
Yep.
I'm not too sure. I think, Dwayne, seriously, like maybe you asked me 30 years ago, I probably could answer that, but I think right now is it just became calm, like just normal that we have to do certain steps, certain precautions, and certain training, and we look for good traits and bad traits, and we look at the traits that this is going to lead on to something bad. We're going to try to correct it or replace that person, and we have very zero.
Mm.
Like I tell people, I'm not going to apologize for being who I am. I'm the company owner. When you screw up, if you don't die, maybe the company's going to get a big fine for Department of Labor. Maybe one of the other employees are going to get injured. So the situation here is safety, 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 safety. And that's all there is to it. Productivity will come, ability will come, seniority will come, but safety, safety, safety. And you breathe it into them. That's the oxygen they suck inside. Is they have to know that,
Mm.
you know what, you could die today. And they don't look at that, but they know, we're around power lines. Like we have a whack of bucket trucks. We buy them, from Alltech, that we usually use Alltech. We bring their guys in. We do use, and it costs us a bag of money. I could get some Joe Blow down the road to go and do all these tests and stuff. We use those guys to make sure that they're dielectrically tested, so they're certified. Then Nova Scotia Power doesn't have to come to us, the utility company here, and say, "Oh, well, did you do?" No, no, we're going to get it done because we care about. I got my kids in those buckets too, right? And I got people that I
Mhm.
care about. It's not just family. I mean, we care about everybody. But the thing is we, to answer your question, we understand the hazards. We understand how dangerous things could go. How little thing could turn into a big thing, and we don't want any bad things happening to our people. And that's, I don't know. I don't know if that answered the question, but we're pretty damn serious about safety.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not because Department of Labor or this guy or that guy telling us. It's because if we don't, and I will tell you, Dwayne, I'm not going to call Department of Labor on other people, but after every hurricane, like we get all these like backyard Joes or pickup Joes, that you know what we use that term, right? I got
Yep.
land and pickup truck can cut tree, And what happens here is they see the big glory of, oh wow, look at these tree services making all this money. But I see them, Dwayne, along the road, they don't have any safety gear. They
Yep.
they're because I'm not working for that boss. That guy makes me wear my safety pants. And they're running a big huge chainsaw with no safety pants on, no safety gear. And they don't understand. Like I'm at my farm, right? I mean, I see people all the time and I go, hey man, like you're gonna put they're cutting wood in the country and I said, well, are you gonna wear safety gear? Oh geez, I ran a saw for 30 years and I cut myself. I said, really? Well, I have too, but I wear my safety gear all the time. My PPE because I don't want to be deaf. I don't want to be blind. And I don't want to cut myself. So you know what? Put them on. you know. It was funny. I was down at the farm, and I said to my wife, I mean, I love the woman, right? But I had to, I don't know how she took this. Right? I'm running a bucket truck doing some prunings, and some maple trees where subordinate them. Doing nature's business. Anyway, I question the city arborists and what they're telling us to do. But anyway, now I caught on to this disease, and now I do it to my own trees. So anyway. I said to her, I said, listen, hon, I got to tell you, like, do you not know the rules? And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, anytime a guy's running a bucket truck, like you should periodically check on him. Okay. And I had a good bucket truck, all rebuilt, but I ran it for 2.5 months, and man, I run it hard, not hard, but we ran it hard, and I said, well, the upper control joystick, it fell apart. The pin came out. I mean, I didn't have a bucket evac, and there's lower controls. I mean, it could have just got she's up in the upper field. I said I had to climb down the damn tree, right? It was only a little tree, about 20 feet high, and I said, look, you got to keep an eye on each other. Yeah, you got to keep an eye on here. And then I said, when I use a chainsaw, if you hear ring 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 ring, you're okay. If you hear just idling, you might want to have a little look there. Maybe something happened out there. And so the situation here now, every time I go to use a chainsaw, she's going, "Oh my God, you be careful, will you?" I scared the hell out of her, right? But anyway, she's always picking at me now all the time, paranoid. But the thing is, what I'm trying to get at with her was, it's a dangerous thing. You know what I mean? And shit happens to even the best of us,
Yeah.
right? And kick back, tired, this and this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know whether I answered that right or not.